Hi everyone, my name is Mary, and I'm 19 years old. Have you ever tried to reinvent yourself? Sometimes you think that this is the only thing that can save you from your problems. But remember, not everyone likes it when you change. Watch this video till the end and you will find out why my family disowned me after getting plastic surgery. I'm a beauty blogger, and I have a pretty wealthy family who lived in an old mansion. But they had recently lost their business, and they were preparing to put the house up for auction for not having paid their taxes. I decided I wanted to help them keep the house, but how? A large company noticed my video with the Harley Quinn makeup tutorial and was ready to make me their representative. They said that I was very charismatic, I had a big fan base, and that I was very experienced in the advertising business. They liked almost everything about me, except my appearance, especially my nose. Quoting the woman who talked to me, "We would like to have a girl with more standard appearance." Why did they send me the partnership offer then? But I wasn't at a loss. They probably really liked me. If they were still willing to cooperate with me, maybe you would be willing to correct your imperfections with plastic surgery? Gosh, I really needed the money. I could save our house. And my nose, it's a pity, of course, but it's a small price to pay for happiness. What would you risk for your family? Appearance, money, or your personal life? I thought I did everything right. However, I encountered an unexpected problem. I was too excited when I agreed to the surgery. I didn't think that my savings wouldn't be enough for even one procedure. I tried to think of a way out of this situation, but I couldn't go to work under these conditions. So I reluctantly turned to my parents for help. And of course, they got mad at me. It wasn't because they thought I was pretty just the way I was. My parents were generally supportive of my beauty career. No, it wasn't about their love for me. They were against it because, and this is where you're gonna laugh, they considered my nose a family heirloom. My nose. Sure, I tried to convince them. I said that it would help towards the money we needed, that otherwise we would not be able to save our house. And the choice about the nose and the house was obvious, but apparently only to me. My father firmly forbade me to change my appearance in order to, and I quote, "preserve my pride." I got angry and said that pride should be set aside, but my mother blurted out that I had to forget about my decision, that I have done stupid things and they were ashamed of me in front of our late grandmother. She would never let me have plastic surgery. It was a low blow. I loved my grandmother, and the mention of her hurt me. I burst into tears and ran away. I knew my parents were wrong, and she would be proud of me. But my mother was stubborn, and nothing could change her mind, not even my tears. I knew my grandmother would be proud of me. She had sold the family jewels to save her husband and estate from ruin. Jewels! I looked at my grandmother's photo. If I could sell them profitably, I could use this money to pay for the surgery. But I was tormented by doubts. Was it really worth doing? Was I really willing to sell some of our memories in exchange for a new nose? I wasn't sure. However, I had no other choice. I had to sneak into my parents' room while they were sleeping. I poked around in the drawers of the dressing table and soon found what I was looking for. Although I was disgusted, I felt a little relieved and went to see Mr. Child, a specialist in antique jewelry whom my parents were familiar with. He used to be interested in my grandmother's jewelry, and I immediately thought that he was a great option. Mr. Child greeted me warmly, but the price he named was much lower than I expected. I knew that he wanted to save money on me, so I decided to keep my price until the last moment. However, he seemed to know at once that I was in a hopeless position and said that these jewels were not precious, that no one would take them for more than the price he offered, and that I might be left without any money at all if I continued to be picky. I felt miserable. I didn't want to sell my grandmother's memory for anything. But the truth was, I really didn't have a choice. Either I was changing myself, getting a job, and saving the house, or I didn't even want to think about it. And Mr. Child caught me like a spider in a trap. But on the other hand, I had money and could finally do this stupid nose job. The surgery was terrible. No, it didn't hurt, but no one warned me that I would have to lie still for hours and think, wondering if I did the right thing. Have you ever doubted your decisions when it's too late to change anything? It's a disgusting feeling. Immediately after the surgery, when I wanted to call my parents, I received a call from them. It turned out that the bailiffs arrived to our house for inventory of property, and my parents wanted to pay them off with grandmother's jewelry, but they couldn't find it! Damn! I immediately rushed home. My mom and dad were speechless at the sight of me. I explained the situation, said that I wanted to save the house, but all I heard in response was, "Get out. This is not your house anymore." That was their gratitude. I hoped that they would understand that I also wanted to save our mansion. But apparently the stupid nose was much more valuable to them. I immediately packed up and left. But where could I go? To my friends? First I went to the office of the company. They gave me a tight smile for several hours and made one promise after another. But in the end, it turned out that until the postoperative period was over, I couldn't tell if they can work with me. I left the office upset and panicked because I was sure they would hire me. And at that moment, I wasn't. Then I needed to find another job. And something told me I was not going to make a fortune out of it. I went to my favorite shopping mall. Maybe I could do children's face painting. I could do it. It was easy. But I was immediately surprised by the employer. I would not be hired to work with clients because my face after the surgery would only frighten everyone, especially children. Well, that didn't work. But there was another option. I persuaded them to hire me as a children's animator in costume and makeup. And after that, I started to work like crazy. I didn't have days off, and I slept in the back room. And when I had time to rest, I consulted the clients from my channel and took them shopping. It was almost like a secret side job, but I made good money. So I decided to go home for my parents' wedding anniversary. I thought maybe that enough time had passed and we could make up. Only after I arrived, I realized it was a bad idea. My mom was glad to see me, but she didn't show her emotions in front of people because our rich relatives were invited to the party, and they were disgusted by my appearance. Dad ostentatiously ignored me. Eventually, my aunt came up to me to give me a fake hug and took pity on me, saying that I had committed a terrible crime because of my wayward father. That was too much. I couldn't put up with this old woman and told all those rich Pinocchios exactly what I thought of them, that they didn't really care about my grandmother or her legacy, or they wouldn't have watched our family go down, that it was not my dad's fault that we were losing the house. It could happen to anyone. It was their fault that they didn't come to our rescue. Of course, all those offended fools immediately left our house, and I could finally give my parents my gift money to pay off the lawyers. My mother was very touched, but my father said that it was too late. There were only 2 days left, and we would either have to move out or pay. I started to cry. I asked for forgiveness for my actions. It was a foolish decision, which also didn't bring any good. My mother burst into tears, and she and my father apologized for kicking me out, but they were really offended by my rejection of my inherited nose, even more than the loss of the house. I had to be honest. I wanted to do the nose job anyway. The whole thing just accelerated the process. Family pride was cool, but what could I do if I didn't like my nose? My parents didn't like that, but they were definitely relieved. Things started to look up. I actually got a job with my new nose. The wages were enough to pay all our legal procedures delaying the removal of the house. Hypocritical relatives are no longer welcome in our house. But You are very welcome here to our channel. Subscribe and give us the thumbs up.
I was lying on an operating table in the garage that smelled of mildew. Maybe it's not too late to give up, but it took me so long to get there. No, I have to become an anime beauty. The surgeon held up a mask with anesthesia. All I had to do was to breathe in and wake up a different person with a new face. It all started a month ago when Chris was transferred to our class. That's a pretty boy. Blue eyes, bangs. He looked like a character from an anime. But I immediately realized that I was not going to get anything. I was dark, short, and I could not even put two words together at the sight of a pretty guy. And suddenly Chris, walking to his seat, smiled at me. I immediately blushed. Did he really pay attention to someone like me? If this was the case, then I had a chance to communicate with him or even, but how? I immediately asked for advice from Steve, my next-door neighbor and only friend, but for some reason, Steve got upset and mumbled that I shouldn't worry. It was enough to be myself. So much for the advice. Chris instantly became friends with all the cool guys in the class. They were always hanging out together, and I was even afraid to get close to him. It was only at the end of the week after school that he stayed in class for a while. This was my chance. I saw a beautiful sticker with an anime girl on his phone. Went up to him and asked what it meant. Chris immediately replied that it was the emblem of the anime fan club that he headed. I wanted to continue the conversation, but then Chris was called by his friends from the class and ran away. I followed him out. My friend Steve was waiting for me in the hallway, and we went home together, as usual. All the way I kept talking about Chris being an otaku. And then I came up with a wild idea. If I looked like an anime girl from a sticker, then for sure he would like me. Steve remained silent. Strange. He was usually more talkative. But suddenly he blurted out, since this Chris was so important to me, he would help. A friend of his worked at an anime store, and Steve would arrange a discount for me. Cool. I went straight there after school. I picked up a bunch of different clothes and a special shiny powder. The next day, everyone in the class looked at me in disbelief. I was embarrassed to be standing in the middle of the hallway in an anime outfit myself, but it was all for Chris. Then Chris himself came up to me. I was happy. But he said that the outfit did not suit me, and I looked in it like a parody of his favorite anime. There were chuckles all around. He was right. I was ugly. I was so devastated that I didn't even go back to class. I went home and turned on an anime to see what I had done wrong. But after that, it became even more painful. The cartoon girls were beautiful, with perfect figures, small noses, and huge eyes. If only I could look like them. In desperation, I went to wash my face, and then I saw an advertising flyer in the basket. My mother must have picked it up on the way home. It showed that with the help of a special tape, you can adjust the shape of the nose and eyes. Bingo! I rushed to the store, and then I worked all evening and in the morning. I looked just like those anime beauties. The tape tightened the skin terribly. I was afraid that it would fall away and furtively touched my face. I ran into Steve in the hallway, but instead of complimenting me on how much I had changed, he asked dumbfounded what I had done to myself. Get off me, Steve. You don't understand anything. So much for the friend. The physical education class was beginning. When I appeared in the hall, everyone gasped, and Chris immediately came up to me and even offered to run together. It worked! We were chatting, and I tried not to show my excitement, but when Chris invited me to a party in 3 weeks, I almost fell over. Of course I told him yes. We made a circle around the room. I was sweating. Sweat was even running down my face. And then Chris looked at me strangely. What's wrong? It turned out that the damn tape had peeled off and was dangling. It was a failure. I tried to run away and carefully asked Chris if his invitation was still valid. But he just grinned and brazenly said that now he would invite me if only I would have plastic surgery. And he was sure that this would not help me either. Then he defiantly left. I was desperate. At home, I locked myself in my room, and I was afraid to even look at my ugly face in the mirror. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door, and I rushed to open it. Maybe it was Chris who came to apologize, but of course not. How naive I was. Steve stood in the doorway, flowers in hand. He kept saying I was beautiful, which made me even angrier. I am ugly, and you need to see a doctor to check your eyesight. He wanted to say something else, but in a fit of anger, I slammed the door. I turned off my phone and watched anime for days. I kept thinking about Chris. I dreamed about him, and I even woke up screaming his name. It seemed I was obsessed with him. Or maybe I was sick. Soon, YouTube gave me a new video. The heroine of the show was a woman who had dozen surgeries, and she looked like a monster. Yes, there are people. Stop! So after all, you can probably make anyone out of yourself. And even an anime character? And then the thought of the surgery took me seriously, and I immediately remembered Chris's last words. The party was 2 weeks away. I'll make it, and then Chris will be mine. The very next day, I rushed to call the clinics. But no one would operate on me because of my age. Well, no, I just wouldn't give up. I got into the darknet. Here I could definitely find everything. And I came across the website of a doctor. He was working illegally. I was scared, but I decided to call him anyway. The doctor agreed to operate on me, but it cost $500. And where could I get that much money? Then I remembered that in the anime store where I bought clothes, there was an ad urgently needed animator. I rushed there, but there was already a whole crowd of youngsters dreaming of getting this place. It was easy money. I had no choice but to call Steve. The shop was run by an acquaintance of his. I lied to him that I needed money for cute anime shoes. Steve listened in silence and said dryly that he would help, but only if I went to the party with him and not with Chris. I almost choked. We're friends, but there was nothing to do, and I agreed. An hour later, I was already pulling a Totoro costume. It's one of the cult heroes of anime. If I distributed leaflets for 12 hours a day, I would collect the necessary amount in a week without any problems. But after an hour on the street, I was ready to give up. It was very hot in the suit. Besides, they didn't take any single leaflet from me. A block from the store, I came across the fairground. Here I met great success. The flyers were being snapped up, but suddenly someone tapped me on the shoulder. I turned to see a huge man in a similar Totoro suit standing in front of me. He said it was his territory, and I'd better get out. I don't think so, damn Totoro. Then a fight broke out between us. We were lying on the ground, awkwardly squirming in these suits, until our boss came running at the noise. I thought he was going to punish the bastard, but he just threw me out without paying a cent. I trudged home, smearing sweat and dirt on my face. And where could I earn money for the surgery? It's over. When I got home, I automatically reached into the closet for clean clothes. Then the only clothes from the store fell out on me, from where I was kicked out in disgrace. I shuddered with hatred for the boss. I worked through the day in a stupid suit, and he didn't even pay. What should I do? Time was short and I needed money for the surgery. And then I remembered that when I was changing, he closed the cash register, and it was full of money. I think I have a plan. And at that moment, Steve called, just in time. I told him everything. I didn't get paid at the damn store, which meant he wouldn't be partying with me, unless he was going to help me in the robbery. Steve was horrified and tried to talk me out of it. Then I called him a coward and hung up. Handsome Chris would definitely not behave like this. Well, I would do it myself. I found an crowbar in my father's garage and went to the store that evening. After waiting for the boss to lock the door, I put on the mask of the anime villain, Shishio Makoto, and crept to the window. And then someone took me by the shoulder. I was stunned with fear. Steve was standing behind me. He took the crowbar from me, saying that the whole neighborhood would come running at the sound of the glass, and handed me the keys. He managed to steal them from his friend. Wow, Steve, did you decide to help me? We quickly entered the store. I grabbed the money, and we immediately left. Half an hour later, we were walking home through the park, and I was so happy. In my joy, I even blurted out to Steve that now I had enough for the surgery. I would be a real anime girl. Hearing this, Steve turned pale, and he said that he understood everything. I used him. After that, Steve turned around and quickly went home. For a second, I wondered if I'd done the right thing with Steve, but I tried to push all these thoughts away. Soon, Chris would appreciate my efforts, and I definitely wouldn't worry anymore. The next day, I went to the surgeon. I exhaled and walked into the garage where my surgery was supposed to take place. Man, what a measly hole. I hoped I didn't get infected with something here. The lamp blinked, and the anesthetic mask looked like an instrument of torture. I lay down on the table and squeezed my eyes shut, and the surgeon held up a mask with anesthesia. Am I doing this just to please some guy? I thought at the last second. Suddenly there was a crash. Someone broke in the door. It was Steve. He shouted at the surgeon to get away from me and that he was going to call the cops and literally dragged me out of the garage. I resisted, but then Steve pulled his phone out of his pocket. What kind of nonsense was this? But then I saw how in a fresh video, Chris made fun of my photos and anime costumes in front of his friends. He said they got to him by constantly trying to become an anime girl. But I was just a freak. Something inside me snapped. Oh my god, all this time, he was just making fun of me, and I almost disfigured myself. But then the cops came running out of the dark and handcuffed Steve. The owner of the anime store recognized him from the camera footage, and Steve was tracked down. No, wait. I saw Steve being led away and I knew he was doing everything for me. But now they were going to take him to the police because of me. I made up my mind and I shouted at the cops that I'd made Steve do it for me. After that, we were taken to the police station together. I was very afraid that we would be sent to prison, but since we were minors, we were eventually given a month of correctional labor. On the first day, we carried bags of garbage, but even here, Steve tried to help me. At the end of the day, it started to rain and we were exhausted waiting for the bus. It looked just like a shot from Totoro. I wanted to say this to Steve, but he suddenly turned to me and kissed me. And suddenly, despite my appearance, I felt the happiest in the world. And I realized that all this time, there was a person who appreciated and accepted me for who I was. I cried with happiness. At that moment, the bus arrived. Did you like the video? Then subscribe and like it. Support the channel. Thank you!